Alright, so we're checking out the ToolkitRC MC8 Multi-Function Checker. So it's a battery checker plus a lot of other functions, and this video is going to cover the latest firmware, which is version 1.1, which came out at the end of December. I think from some of the few videos I've seen where the reviews came out early for this one is based on the earlier versions of the firmware, which doesn't have all the same features, so you may want to rewatch this video and you'll be able to see all the updated features that are going to show you for this new firmware. It is quite a bit of extra stuff. Anyway, in the box you get the checker itself, you get a USB-A to USB-A cable for firmware updates, which you'll need to do the firmware updates, and then you get this little quick start guide. I've already attached the screen protector on there. You can see didn't do a good job, a little bit of bubble under there, but yeah, this is something that I have actually been using for a while, and I just keep it in my bag with the rest of my stuff. It's nice and small, as you can see, along with obviously the main function of checking your battery voltage. It does a lot of other stuff which could be useful in the field. So really all the main functions here are listed, and the specs are listed on the back, and there's the input range of 7 to 35 volts. It goes up to 8S batteries for the balance, lead connector, you have USB Type-C, and I'll show you that in a moment. And then for the measure and output here, PWM, PPM, and S-Bus are the three things you can measure and output. On the checker itself, you get this scroll wheel and button. You get the slider here for outputting signals on the 3-pin connector over here. Over here you got the connector for your 8S balance leads. You got your XT60 on the bottom, that's the input, 7 to 35 volts. Nothing on the back, and on the top you have a USB-A for the firmware updates. For this, also you can attach a regular USB-A cable, and we'll show you how to do that so you can charge up USB-C devices. And you have a USB-C output as well if you want to connect directly USB-C to USB-C. So of course the main function here is doing your battery checks. Go ahead and plug in your balance lead on your battery. Will turn on, see version 1.1 of the firmware, and you get the readout of the voltages on each of the cells. So this is a 3-cell battery, about 4.09 volts per cell there. Shows you your battery percentage. This is another new feature of this firmware, total battery voltage, and also the delta, which is millivolts in terms of the difference in terms of the voltage levels of each of the different cells. And you have a couple icons up here, USB-C up here. That will turn on when you plug in the main input here, so that you can charge things up via USB-C. And then you have this little, it looks like a balance icon. So if you press the scroll wheel, it'll start balancing and basically try and remove this little delta there, the difference between the cells. So press that. It turns on the balance function, and it'll try and balance the cells. So it'll take voltage from the higher cells and try to put them into the lower cell. The balance function in terms of the current is like 60 milliamps, so it's pretty low. So it'll take a while for it to do all this to balance the cells. It's not really the best way, but if you're in a pinch, this will work. It's kind of slow. So to turn that off, just press the button again, and that'll turn off that function. And it's basically just a reader. It doesn't do anything else but tell you what the voltage is. If you go ahead and plug in the XT60, get a little tone there. Now the USB is actually now active, so we can plug in our USB-A cable here, and the USB output is up to 20 watts, so it can do quick charge on like a cell phone or something like that. So I'm going to go and plug in my phone here, USB-C phone, and it should say charging there. So the output on the USB-A port is only 5 volts up to 1 amp, so that's actually not quick charging. If you want to use the quick charge function or the USB power delivery function, you have to plug in a USB-C to USB-C cable or use the USB-C output. So I'm going to plug in that here. And so you do need the right type of cables. So not all USB-C cables are the same. Some of them won't function as quick charge or power delivery because they don't have the correct chip inside the cable. That's not a problem of the checker here. That's a problem of your cable. So keep that in mind. So we got to plug in here, and now we have fast charging here. So it's probably like, 9 volts at like 2 amps, something like that. It really depends on how the protocol is negotiated between the phone or your device and the output of the checker here. But in any event, you can see that we have voltage coming out of here and the battery is getting drained slowly. So I like to use this as a sort of a method of putting batteries into storage voltage. So if they're, for example, if the battery has like somewhat high voltage and I want to drain some of it out of it and get closer to storage voltage, this can do that. It will stop at a voltage you can set, which you can go into the menu to set that. So this is a new function of the firmware, this latest firmware that isn't on the older firmware. So you long press the scroll wheel, takes you into the setup here, and then you can adjust this safe voltage setting here. So if you want it to be 3.85 volts, it'll stop at 3.85 volts per cell, or you can lower it down to something like 3.8 volts. And then so when you're using this as a USB charger, basically is what this is, 20 watt USB charger essentially in this setup here. And let's go ahead and exit out of the menu. It will actually keep basically sending the voltage out of the battery and charging one of your devices until all the cells are reaching 3.8 volts, and then it will stop. Just taking another quick look at the menu again, you can set the safe voltage. You can set your backlight here, so if you want to change the brightness of your screen, you can do that here. I like it nice and bright so I can look at outside. It is a nice 2-inch IPS display, so it is quite visible even in bright sunlight. You can turn off this buzzer, which I don't like the noise this thing makes. Turn that on. It is pretty loud, and there isn't a volume setting here, so I just turn it off. You can change your language, which is also new. You can change your theme from light to dark. So if you like a dark screen, some people like that, prefer that. That's better, but I actually prefer the light screen. And then you can hit the default button here to reset everything back to default settings. And that's what's currently in this firmware, version 1.1. In terms of the menu, they may add additional features in a future firmware version. You never know. All right, so the last function I do want to demonstrate a little bit here is the signal output measurer and checker here. So you can actually output signals and check signals on these 3-pin connectors. It's basically just a 3-pin servo connector like this. And the signal, the white wire goes on top. And it's outputting 5 volts. This is for like standard servo testing. To go into the testing menu, so you just scroll over to the right. You can see there's 3 dots at the bottom. Scroll over one that's measuring. So if you have a source that is going to output a signal and you want to measure that signal and see if it's accurate or not, you can plug in there like a receiver, for example, and then see if your receiver is working correctly. You do need to probably do some soldering to solder up that receiver to one of these servo connectors so you can measure that signal. There's basically, you can measure PWM signals. So if you long press the button here, if you short press the button, you will highlight that. You can actually then go from PWM to PPM, so you can measure PPM signals or SBus signals. If you want to output a signal instead of measure a signal on that connector there, scroll one more over. Now we're on the output screen, and then we can use this manual mode and this slider here to basically send a different signal out on the PWM channel there. This is a PWM server, obviously, so you can see as those values are adjusted, the servo moves. And you can see the visual output there as well. Kind of get the idea there. So if you want to change the mode, long press the button. You can change it from manual, and then select it again. It'll turn red. There's auto 1. Basically automatically adjusts that signal from 1000 to 2000. 2 is basically same thing but faster. And 3 is even faster. Then there's the centering function as well. So if you want to center your servos, obviously it centers at 1520. Apparently 1520 is the actual center for a PWM signal. And if you want to center your servos, this is another new feature of this firmware. This wasn't on the older firmware. Okay, so I think I'll cover for this video the ToolkitRC MC8. Definitely something I think you'll want to check out and have in your toolkit. Much more than just a battery checker, you can use it for a lot of other stuff here, as I mentioned before. And I especially like the fact you can use it to bring like batteries that are kind of near full or have a lot of voltage, and you want to suck that power out of there. You don't have to just let the battery sit there. You can actually charge up your other devices that are USB or USB-C compatible and be able to bring your batteries down to storage voltages. I think that's also a pretty nice feature of this. It basically turns it into a like LiPo battery to USB-C charger, which is kind of nice. Okay, that's going to do it for this video. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one.